My name is Santosh Kumar and welcome to the channel CyberSatrix. Every company nowadays is routing towards the cloud platform and like Azure, AWS or GCP, etc. So, and everyone in the organization needs to deploy their resources in an automate way, right? They cannot go on doing it manually because it's gonna create a lot of manual effort in applying or creating these services manually on each of the virtual private network, or setting up a virtual private network. That is also a tedious task. So this is achieved by multiple ways nowadays. The automation of deploying the infrastructure as a service, this is being deployed in multiple by multiple methods. One of the method you would have heard is Terraform. You would have heard about the Azure ARM template, and you would have also heard about Ansible, right? So these technologies are being used in the recent time to perform or deploy infrastructure as a service in the various cloud platforms. So considering that requirement and the that we have currently trending, I thought of coming up with a series which is based on Azure Resource Manager template. And then initially in today's session specifically, I will be setting up the foundation for the same. And then in the coming sessions, I will be slowly gearing up and explain you the various components or um, of the template and how you can build it efficiently. I'll try my best so that I can explain you in as simple as terms as possible, and show you how it could be done easily. Okay, so let's quickly jump into the discussion or to today's topic, that is JSON, and I'm going to lay a foundation with its structure and the syntax. So what is an Azure Resource Manager template? Azure Resource Manager template is an Azure service which can be used to manage and deploy a resource in an automated way, right? It provides infrastructure as a code functionality, right? As I mentioned you, there are other technologies which can also do the same thing. For example, Terraform, Ansible. Here we are going to learn about ARM template as an infrastructure as a code service, right? This template or this technology will enable you to provision, modify, delete resources, right? So for example, let's say that if you want to create multiple virtual machines, right, and with similar properties like say SKUs, location, the interface attached to the virtual machines, the access control and tags, etc., right? So in this case, you could create a template once, and then you can apply that template multiple times or several times as per the requirement in your infrastructure, right? So that's why it is called as infrastructure as a code functionality. Coming back, how can we deploy this ARM template, right? So we can deploy the ARM template using the below listed methods, right? One is Azure CLI, that is Azure command line, then Azure PowerShell, Azure portal, Azure template, which we just discussed, and Azure biceps. Azure biceps is again depending on the JSON framework, but the way you have to write its structure or syntax varies a bit, and Azure is trying to come up with a more simpler way than JSON to deploy the resources. So have a look on this, and you'll get a better understanding about this. You can also use the DevOps nowadays to create an ARM template, right? For example, if you want to have a version control, or if you want to see that multiple um, uh, users can work at the same time on a template, right? So for that you can use the GitHub too, right? In the coming series, I'll show you how you can deploy the resources using the Azure portal, or Azure PowerShell, or just CLI. At least I'll show you two of the methods to do that in the coming series. Moving forward, okay. So the ARM template is developed in JSON language. And before we jump into ARM template, let us build our basic and lay a strong foundation by understanding the JSON architecture, the JSON structure and its components, right? Because if we understand how to represent the components, we will almost understand everything about JSON, and which will be very helpful in deploying the ARM template, right? So let's quickly jump onto the understanding the JSON structure. As I mentioned earlier, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation Language. It is a text-based data format and have a hierarchically structured relationship. It's an open source and free to use. It's basically have two major components. One is called object. So what is object? So object is basically a collection of name or the value pairs, right? So any real-time item you pick up, right, that can be called as an object. For example, if you have employees, so employee can be an object. Employee will be using the laptops, right? So the laptops can be an object, right? So the object is basically a collection of name or value pair. What is an array? As you would already know, array is basically an ordered list of values, right? It is basically will be a under array will have a list of objects, and they will be in the ordered way, and then we can have multiple object components in the same array. And just as an additional point, the nesting of object is also possible in the JSON, right? For example, let's say that you have a JSON structure you're creating on the employees, right? Or let's say for my organization CyberSatrix, right? So CyberSatrix can have multiple objects. One of the object could be employees, and the second object could be inventory, right? So let's say that when I'm creating an object of employee, right, under object of employee I can have multiple again properties of the employees, right? So those features of the employees can be added as a nested object to the employee. Okay, we will see further, and we will have a better understanding about this. Two major things to take from here: it has objects and arrays. Okay, so what is an object, right? So let's have a more clear picture around this. So as I told, objects denote any real-time entity, right? So real-time entity could be a house, the properties of house, or an employee, or an image, right? The categories of image. Any real-time entity can be called an object. And in JSON object, we use curly braces to represent one object, right? So as you see here, we have a opening curly brace and a closed curly brace to represent an object. So this is the whole thing that is mentioned is called an object. And as I mentioned, it consists of the properties of its corresponding values, right? That is field value pair. So for example, if I'm trying to create a company object here, it will consist of the properties of the company and the corresponding key value pairs, right? For example, the company object name here is CyberSatrix, that is a company name. The number of employees 10, head office is in Hyderabad, category it's a training institute, and is registered true, right? Next thing to observe here is that each and every property of an object is separated by a comma, right? If you see, I have 5 properties here, so until 4th property they are separated by comma, right? And the 5th property is not, and you have to keep and observe that the last property should not be you should not be adding a comma at the end of the last property, right? And as I mentioned already property and its corresponding value is denoted in a key value pair. So we have property 1 and the corresponding value 1, property 2 and the corresponding value 2, right? So this is a pretty simple example to understand what is JSON objects, and hope you have a clear understanding what an object is. Next, as I told, array. So what is an array? So array is basically a collection of objects, right? So object is basically a collection of the object's properties and its corresponding values, and arrays is a collection of the object, right? The object is the arrays is represented by a square bracket, right? So in this case, like let's say that I have these many objects, right? The first object is enclosed, and then it's basically shows the name of the company and the number of employees here, right? So this is my first object, and this is my second object. The company name is Google and category search engine, and this is my third object, name and Microsoft, right? And the separation of object still applies here, right? So here if you see, I have 3 objects, right, which is in the array, and each of the object is ending with a comma except the last one, right? So key points here: array is represented by a square bracket, and it will consist of the array of objects, and each of the object will be separated by a comma except the last object that we have in an array. Great. So now let us understand what is nested objects, right? So I explained to you what is object, what is an array, right? Don't get confused between the array and the nested objects, right? So an array will consist of the collection of object, and nested object will be nothing but an object within another object, right? So as I said here, objects can nest array, and that starts and ends with again a square bracket and close bracket. So if you see, this is my CyberSatrix, or basically let's say a company's object, right? So I gave the properties, I'm giving the objects details here, right? So I gave the properties of an object, that is name, number of employees, head of the office, category is registered, right? So if you see, each of these are separated by a comma. Now under the contact us object, I have again multiple properties for the contact us, right? So contact us is an object again here, and it has multiple properties for them, right? So in the overall objects, these are the properties, and for this properties, for this specific properties, I have additional properties. So this is called nesting of objects, right? If you see, in the contact us, I can have email ID, I can have name, and I can have website, right? And in these specific objects, it is again the properties are separated by comma except the last one, right? And I'm also shown here that you can have an array of objects inside the whole nested in the whole company object, the larger company object, right? So if you see, I have the properties, and under the employees I can have nested objects, right? I'm sorry, array of objects. So in employees, I say I can have multiple employees, right? So I'm, for example, I've given here 2 employees, name, and then their corresponding employee ID, right? So this employee is an array, it has the 2 objects, and each of them separated by comma except the last one. And if you see here, until here, right, since this is the last array object for me, I have given only the separated comma values until this here, and then I have not given for this one, right? So it is very simple and neat structure that you will need to understand for JSON, and should have a very clear understanding as of now. Okay, so again, key pickups from here, the key points: the whole company object which I'm creating here can have single objects, it can have nested objects, it can have array of objects, everything in the same JSON structure, JSON template that I've created. It can have multiple things. Okay, so now as I mentioned earlier, right, so the ARM template is developed based on JSON, and since we understood the JSON, and we have set up our foundation for the ARM template, and now you should have a good understanding of JSON structure, its syntax, and its components like objects, array, and nested objects, right? Okay, so I'll try to explain you detailed about the ARM template structure and syntax in the next video, but just for the basic understanding, this is the structure of Azure Resource Manager in the simplest form, right? And these are the basic elements that you will be using while creating an ARM template, right? Schema is basically the file in which the JSON notation for a specific ARM related to ARM template is stored here, and then we mention which template to be which schema to be used. Parameters are, you can consider them currently as a unknown value which you provide during the execution of the template. Functions are any specific activity which you like to do. Variables are known value which you can mention it while giving the template, and resources are the main element in this, where you have to mention what kind of resources on which you want to apply this template upon. and the corresponding outputs, right? So we'll have a detailed understanding about the structure, and we will create a basic simple template in the next video. Okay, so have a great day,
Great.
and please subscribe to my channel and like the video. Let's meet in the other video with more detailed understanding